Welcome to the Parsha Themes Shir. It's Parsha Pinchas this week, and it is for the Refuah Shalema of Moshe Shimon ben Leas to Achaya Halevi. So, avoiding false modesty. God said regarding Pinchas in Nuni Nosein Loi, I hereby give him the eternal covenant of priesthood. The fact that Pinchas was much younger than Moshe did not prevent him from acting in his presence, once it became clear that Moshe had forgotten what needed to be done. Similarly, we should not be intimidated when we see that those of greater stature are not righting some wrong that must be addressed. It could well be, as in the case of Pinchas, that divine providence is keeping them silent in order that a less qualified individual, so to speak, seize the moment and answer destiny's call to greatness. When divine providence presents us with an opportunity to right some wrong in the world, we must pursue it with total self-sacrifice, as did Pinchas. Now, thinking of repentance, Uvnei Korach lo mesu, it says. Korach's sons did not die. The sons of Korach played a key role in his rebellion and were therefore swallowed up into the ground along with the other rebels. However, since Korach's sons, unlike the others, repented in their hearts, they were spared the death penalty. God allowed them to stay alive in an underground cave until the rest of their generation died out, after which he allowed them to emerge from hiding and resume their lives in the community. Had they acted upon their regret, they would have been spared even this lesser punishment. Their survival, though, shows us the tremendous power of repentance, even when it is not acted upon as it should be. This insight should quiet any doubts that we may have about the possibility of redemption in our times. Even merely thinking about repenting is sufficient to bring about the final redemption, especially when this is added to the merits we have accrued throughout our long exile. The Torah we have studied, the mitzvos, the commandments we have performed, and the martyrdom we have suffered. Now, humility in self-assertion. So in preparation for Moshe's imminent death, God instructed him to appoint Yehoshua as his successor. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe, kach lecha Yehoshua. God said to Moses, take Yehoshua, son of Nun, a man of spirit, and lay your hand upon him. Yehoshua was chosen as Moshe's successor by virtue of his consummate diligence in absorbing Moshe's instruction, both from the Torah that Moshe taught and through Moshe's personal conduct. The difference in their leadership was that Moshe's was largely based on miracles, whereas Yehoshua's was conducted naturally. Therefore, it was specifically through Yehoshua's leadership that the purpose of creation, to sanctify the natural, mundane world, was fulfilled. But Yehoshua succeeded only because he was a selfless reflection of Moshe. His selflessness enabled the miraculous nature of Moshe's leadership to carry over into his own natural leadership. Thus, Yehoshua's first conquest, the city of Jericho, occurred miraculously through the fall of the city's walls by blowing the shofars, the horns. From Yehoshua, we learn to be fully committed both to humbly absorbing and transmitting the heritage and lessons of the Torah as they have been handed down to us by our predecessors, and to applying the Torah's teachings to the novel situations of our generation. Now, nourishing God. God then instructed Moshe regarding the daily and holiday communal sacrifices that were to be regularly offered up in the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Es korbani lachmi leishai tishmeru. So God instructed Moshe to tell the Jewish people, you must guard my offering, my food for my fire offerings. The Gemara in Brachos points to the relationship between the soul and the body as a model for the nature of God's relationship with the world. The soul cannot be perceived by the senses, yet its presence and effect is keenly felt in every part of the body. So too God, though he transcends our reality and is utterly beyond its perception, he vitalizes the entirety of creation and is fully present in its every part. This explains the amazing statement by the Zohar that the people of Israel provide nourishment for their Father in heaven. Food is the glue that keeps soul and body together, sustaining the embodiment of the spirit within its material shell. By the same token, our service of God is what sustains God's involvement with his creation, feeding his desire to continue to infuse it with existence and life. God calls the sacrifices his daily food, for just as food sustains the body, so did the sacrifices draw sustaining divine life force into the world. God refers to the korbanos, the animal and meal offerings brought in the tabernacle in the holy temple, as my bread. The korbanos and their present-day substitute, prayer, are the highest expression of our striving to serve God and come close to him. As such, they are the food which sustains the life of the universe, the fuel that keeps the divine soul alive within the body of creation. That's Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi. The daily prayers were instituted to parallel the daily sacrifices and to substitute for them in the absence of the tabernacle or temple. Thus, our daily prayers also sustain God. If we ever doubt how important our prayers can be, we should recall that God considers them vital to the world's existence and maintenance. They are as important to him as our daily bread is to us. Furthermore, the constancy of the daily sacrifices express the eternal bond between God and the Jewish people. Now, never influence another person to sin. Ki tzorim haim lachem, for they are enemies to you, in their plottings against you on the matter of Peor, it says in our Parsha. But how do we know that one who causes a man to sin is even worse than one who kills him? 2 nations advanced against Israel with a sword, and 2 with transgression. The Egyptians and the Edomites advanced against them with a sword, as is proven by the text. Their enemies said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will draw my sword. That's from Shemos. And Edom said unto him, you shall not pass through me, lest I come out with a sword against you. 2 advanced against them with transgression, namely the Moabites and the Ammonites. Of those who had advanced against them with the sword, it is written, you shall not abhor an Edomite, you shall not abhor an Egyptian. Of those, however, who had advanced against them with transgression, endeavoring to make Israel sin, it says, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter into the assembly of God, even to the 10th generation shall none of them enter forever. Now, conquering and elevating the material world. Ish ki yamus uvein ein lo, says our Parsha. If a man dies and has no son, then you shall pass his inheritance on to his daughter. The Kabbalistic masters taught that every soul has a portion in the land, a piece of God's world that he or she has been charged to sanctify. Thus, a person's mission in life can be seen as consisting of 2 primary objectives. First, the refinement and elevation of his own soul, self, and character. And second, the refinement and elevation of his portion of the material world by developing the material resources which have been placed under his control or influence as a home for God, a place that serves and houses the divine truth. The latter objective is the essence of the mitzvah to conquer the land of Canaan and transform it into a holy land. This was the failing of the generation of the desert. While they achieved an exodus from Egypt, a liberation from the bounds that constrict the soul, they are unwilling to assume the challenge of conquering the land, transforming the material world into a home for God. The nature of the material is that it is resilient and hostile to godliness. Conquest of the land, it would therefore seem, requires that a person go to battle with the material world, suppress and subjugate its materialistic nature, and impose on it a higher purpose and function. But not everyone is a warrior. The Talmud says of the human race, just as their faces are different, so are their characters different. There are bold characters and meek characters, aggressive natures and passive dispositions. There are those who revel in challenge and those who are all but devoid of the warrior instinct and the zeal for confrontation. Are the latter exempt from the mission to conquer the land? And if they are not, how are they to achieve it? Therein lies the deeper significance of the laws of inheritance as commanded by God in response to the petition of the daughters of Zelophehad. Before the daughters of Zelophehad came along, common wisdom ascertained that if a person lacks a son, an aggressive and combative nature, he or she may deduce from this that he has no role to play in the conquest of the land. Such a person may therefore devote all his energies to the refinement of his inner self and leave the task of sanctifying an unholy world to those with sons. The daughters of Zelophehad knew otherwise. Conquering and settling the land, they insisted, is not an exclusively masculine endeavor. True, this is a task which often calls for aggressiveness and confrontation, but there is also a feminine way to transform the materiality of our lives into a holy land. God agreed. If a man has no son, he instructed, you shall pass his inheritance on to his daughter. His portion in the land can be possessed and developed by the passive, compassionate, non-confrontational side of his soul. This is the law of life revealed by the daughters of Zelophehad. Not all conquests are achieved by overpowering one's adversary. At times, receptiveness and empathy are equally, if not more, effective in overcoming the hostility of the enemy and transforming its very nature. The absence of a male heir in the soul may in fact indicate the presence of a feminine self no less capable of claiming the soul's portion in the world and transforming it into a home for God, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now Moshe's legacy. After you have seen, you also will be gathered to your people as your brother Aaron was. Rashi is intrigued by the apparently superfluous word also, and makes the comment that Moshe desired to die as Aaron had died. In what sense was Moshe envious of his brother, though? It certainly wasn't that he, like Aaron, wished to die painlessly. Moshe was not afraid of pain, nor can it be that he envied his brother's popularity. Even though about Aaron it was said that when he died he was mourned by all the children of Israel, something the Torah does not say in his case, Moshe knew that leadership does not mean popularity. He did not seek it. He could not have done what he had to do and achieve it. The self-assertion explains that Aaron had the privilege of knowing that his children would follow in his footsteps. Elazar, Aaron's son, was appointed as high priest in his lifetime. Indeed, to this day, Kohanim are direct descendants of Aaron. According to Ksav Sofer, Moshe longed to see one of his sons, Gershom or Eliezer, take his place as leader of the people, but it was not to be. Rashi also notes that the passage in which Moshe asks God to appoint a successor follows directly after the story of the daughters of Zelophehad, who asked that they be permitted to inherit the share in the land of Israel that would have gone to their father had he not died. Rashi links the two episodes. When Moshe heard God tell him to give the inheritance of Zelophehad to his daughters, he said to himself, the time has come that I should make a request of my own, that my sons should inherit my position. God replied to him, this is not what I have decided. Yeshua deserves to receive reward for serving you and never leaving your tent. This is what Shlomo meant when he said, he who keeps the vineyard shall eat its fruit, and he that waits on his master shall be honored. Moshe's prayer was not granted. Moshe and Aaron epitomized the two great roles in Jewish continuity, Horim and Moirim, parents and teachers. A parent hands on the Jewish heritage to their children. A teacher does likewise to their disciples. Aaron was the archetypal parent, Moshe the great example of a teacher. Aaron was succeeded by his son, Moshe by his disciple Yeshua. Were Torah leadership to be dynastic, a matter of inheritance, Judaism would quickly become a society of privilege and hierarchy. To this, the sages were utterly opposed. Everyone has a share in Torah. It is the shared patrimony of every Jew. Nowhere is this more clearly stated than in the great words of the Rambam. With 3 crowns was Israel crowned, with the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of sovereignty. The crown of priesthood was bestowed on Aaron, the crown of sovereignty was given to David, the crown of Torah, however, is for all Israel. As it is said, Torah tivalon Moshe Marasha Kalias Yaakov. The Torah that Moshe commanded us is the heritage of the congregation of Yaakov. This was spoken by Moshe as a blessing to the Jewish people before his passing. It establishes that the Torah is the eternal birthright and legacy of every Jew, regardless of their background or level of scholarship. Whoever desires it can win it. Do not suppose that the other 2 crowns are greater than the crown of Torah, for it is said, "By me kings reign and princes decree justice. By me princes rule." Hence we learn the crown of Torah is greater than the other 2 crowns. This is one of the great egalitarian statements in Judaism. The crown of Torah is available to whoever seeks it. There have been societies which sought to create equality by evenly distributing power or wealth. None succeeded fully. The Jewish approach was different. A society of equal dignity is one in which knowledge, the most important kind of knowledge, namely Torah, knowledge of how to live, is available equally to all. From earliest times to today, the Jewish people have predominantly been communities built around schools, sustained by communal funds, so that none should be excluded. The sages drew a strong connection between home and school, parent and teacher. Thus, for example, Maimonides rules, a duty rests on every scholar in Israel to teach all disciples who seek instruction from him, even if they are not his children, as it is said, and you shall teach them diligently to your children. According to traditional authority, the term your children includes disciples. For disciples are called children, as it is said, and the sons of the prophets came forth. In the same vein, he writes elsewhere, just as a person is commanded to honor and revere his father, so he is under an obligation to honor and revere his teacher, even to a greater extent than his father. For his father gave him life in this world, while his teacher, who instructs him in wisdom, secures for him life in the world to come. Education is a conversation across the generations between parent and child. In the one verse in which the Bible explains why Avram was chosen as the father of the new faith, it says, "For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just." Avram was chosen to be both a parent and an educator. Moshe was therefore denied the chance to see his children inherit his role, so that his personal disappointment would become a source of hope to future generations. Torah leadership is not the prerogative of an elite. It does not pass through dynastic succession. It is not confined to those descended from great scholars. It is open to each of us, if we will it and give it our best efforts of energy and time. But at the same time, Moshe was given a great consolation. Just as to this day Kohanim are the sons of Aaron, so are all who study Torah the disciples of Moshe. Some are given the privilege of being a parent, others the privilege of being a teacher. Both are ways in which something of us lives on into the future. Parent as teacher, teacher as parent. These are Judaism's greatest roles, one immortalized in Aaron, the other made eternal in Moshe. And that's the end of Parshas Pinchas. We'll be back with a double Parsha next week of Matas Masay. Until then, have a great week, have a great Shabbos, and have a great week, and Shalom.